Reaction to what we're seeing this weekend, and a lot of it. Chris Stirewalt is politics editor here at Fox News. Molly Hemingway is senior editor at The Federalist, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Molly, first to you before we go back to the Sean Spicer and all of the things from Friday and what he was saying about the numbers. What about this Women's March and what we're seeing in the message? Obviously, some of those messages were pretty aggressive, others a little more passive, but your thoughts?
Well, I think people on the left have wanted to have some type of cathartic moment for the last couple of months. They were very surprised and shocked by what happened in the election. And so what happened today were people in liberal cities, liberal people from liberal cities, gathered en masse and wanted to express that confusion and fear and outrage that they have over the political turn of events that took place in November. And at the same time, and so it's on the one hand, nothing new. This is exactly what we knew would be there. On the other hand, I do think it's a significant thing, and that people on the right should notice that when there are big public outcries, they are significant and they should be paid attention to.
Yeah, and we should point out that Madonna finished that sentence that she wanted to blow up the White House, but I know this won't change anything. Not that that changes the impact of that particular sentence, but...
Yes, there was quite a bit of incendiary rhetoric and very divisive rhetoric. It is true that pro-life women were told explicitly that they weren't welcome at the march in positions of leadership, and there were a lot of vulgar signs and things. You know, little children were there, but people had some pretty vulgar signs against men and whatnot. I'm not sure that's a message that's going to resonate, again, outside of liberal cities, which are already fully in Democratic control, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, let's turn to this Sean Spicer statement. It was not a briefing, excoriating the press about the number counting on the crowd size in the inauguration, the position of the MLK bust and the Churchill bust in the Oval Office. Chris?
If it had been about something, it might have been something, right? If it had been about national security, or if it would have been about some life or death matter for the Republic, then maybe that level of dudgeon, maybe scolding the press at length like that, would have been of some purpose. But it was about ego. It was about how big your crowd is. Obama had a bigger crowd than you, or this is the crowd size. I'm sure that the Obama people were not happy many times when people said things like your crowd size was smaller in 2012. I'm sure they didn't like it. This sort of response is all out of proportion when you come out swinging haymakers like that over something that is about you, and you've been telling people, what are we going to do on day one? We're going to get to work. We're going to get right to work. That's the thing we're going to do. We've got to do the people's business, and then you come in and talk about your crowd size. That is not the way to go. By the way, I was just
referencing with John Roberts that white, as you can see, the white on the bottom, the sheeting on the ground, that was put in this time. That's 2009, Barack Obama's inauguration crowd there, and 2017. Charles?
You use the word surreal, which is a nice way of saying just plain weird. I mean, for the press secretary to step out on what looked like an emergency, had to be called. We were going to do it on Monday, but we moved it up. And it is basically over ratings. And let's remember that it was only a week ago that as president-elect, he was tweeting about the ratings for Celebrity Apprentice and sort of mocking his successor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, comparing his ratings to, and I think he referred to himself, DJT, as the ratings champ or something.
Ratings machine.
Ratings machine. This is an obsession which is not terribly healthy. It's been one that Trump has had: crowd size, ratings, poll numbers. When they're good, he'll cite them. And it's just not a good way to start out. I would say I'm the world's expert on the Churchill bust.
Yes.
Because I pointed it out at the beginning of the Obama administration. They denied it ever happened. In the end, they had to issue an apology, which I noted was the only time this administration, the previous administration, Obama, had ever apologized to an entity that was not the third world thuggish dictatorship.
We should point out that was when President Obama and his administration removed Winston Churchill's bust, which was on a table in the Oval Office, and it was taken out of the Oval Office, put in mothballs essentially, and MLK, Martin Luther King's bust, was put there.
Right. It explains the MLK part, because as a substitute, and it's understandable, first African American in the White House, we want to put MLK. So I think the reason it became a story is because it looked like at least a false reporting. Made it look like a deliberate attempt to undo what Obama had done and to disrespect MLK. So I think that's the origin of the story.
And basically, they moved it to the other side of the room, and they put Churchill closer to the Oval Office desk. Right. Bottom line. I want to get back to these numbers.
Yeah.
You're shaking your head here. This is like a signal that this is just like the inauguration speech, that people should get out of their heads that this is going to be a different way that this White House is going to deal with reporters?
Well, I think in general, what is surreal for a lot of people is watching the media be so histrionic and so hysterical about every single thing that the president does. And there are a lot of false reports that are going out. Every single cabinet nominee gets a false report put out about him. And what this administration is signaling.
Let me just push back a little bit. The president of the United States, his first speech in front of the 117 stars at the CIA, the people who died as operatives, some of them don't have names attached to them, spent a lot of time talking about the size of his crowd on Inauguration Day, and then followed it up with this pushback from the press secretary. I understand we're in a different dynamic and a different paradigm with this administration, but you have to admit that this is very different.
It's completely different, and at the same time, just because Donald Trump is obsessed with something doesn't justify the media being obsessed in the opposite direction. The media need to retain calm sanity as they cover this man, and they can't do it when they're reacting to every single little thing he says and does with extreme levels of outrage or with false stories. And so there will be pushback, and I think what's important for the media to understand is that a lot of American people are not on the side of the media. They feel they have been poorly served by them. So if we want to do a good job holding him accountable, we have to get our house in order.
I totally agree with your assessment of where people are as far as what they think about the media. Clearly, that's not a winner.
No.
We're low on the totem pole.
It is. We should all keep our heads about us. There's no question about it. And you can. And as we've talked about before, if you get so spun up over everything Trump does, then he'll control everything that you do. Democrats who are controlled by Trump because they're responding to his outrages. However, summoning the press to a meeting to be dressed down about reporting on crowd sizes is not how you start. It doesn't evoke a president who says, we're going to work day one. We are starting with the business of the people on day one. Does not go to Langley and then, standing in front of those stars, complain about the coverage of his crowd size. That's not getting to work on day one. That's thinking about yourself. That's thinking about your inauguration. That's thinking about your ratings.
That said, Charles, he went to Langley with a signal that this was his first stop. He wanted to make sure that the people of the intelligence community knew that he respected them, and he said he's behind them 1,000%.
Look, that was a very healthy choice. It was a very smart choice, and it was a reassuring choice. There was a feud that he had with the outgoing heads of the intelligence agencies, and this was his way of saying that was essentially me and what he sees as the political heads of the agencies. It is not an attack on you, the people who work inside. I respect you. I will support you. That's a great message. But unfortunately, when you look at the transcript, he wanders around in a way that is rather troubling. At one point, citing the fact that he had an uncle who was a professor at MIT, and he's quite smart, Trump himself. This is sort of a meandering thing that you can do in an early interview when you're a candidate, but he's president. And when you're standing in front of the stars, which is a solemn place, a sacred place, you should show a little more discipline.
The CIA people gathered there seemed to give him a lot of applause in what he was saying. He's clearly off teleprompter, and he's doing his thing. I mean, it's more campaign speech than it is, the scripted speech that we see from presidents at events day to day.
Right, and the crowd that was there, they were people who wanted to be there. They were people who asked to come to it. So it's not entirely surprising that they would be more receptive to what he was saying than others. But it's absolutely true that these rank-and-file agents have been caught in the crossfire of a war that Trump had with intel chiefs. And I think that message was very well received. And the thing is, people actually hear Trump a little bit differently than people who are parsing every word, too. It was very undisciplined what he said, but there were also some messages that came through loud and clear, including that he supports the work of the rank and file in the intelligence agencies. And that was something they needed to boost their morale.
The point is, when you become the President of the United States, your words are going to be parsed. They are incredibly important. You can say one sentence and the dollar will lose its value.
Well, for example, when he said that that he should have taken the oil from Iraq, and maybe we'll have another shot at it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Iraq, you raise your eyebrows a little
Again,
bit.
though, that's one of these things where people are in America are wanting us to not just be careful about which wars we fight, but when we fight them, win them. When they hear someone talking this way about actually being aggressive in our war-fighting posture, that's a message that goes over extremely well with
No,
people.
I get that, Molly.
And
I'm just
poorly.
saying words matter. They do matter.
plundering the oil is a war crime.
Okay, last thing. This is day one.
Yeah, exactly. Where do we go from here? And the press is looking for, the public is looking for, the administration is looking for a way to put this into some sort of balance so that you can get into the business of governing. Remember, they have cut off a big hunk here, and that's doing Obamacare first. That is going to suck all the oxygen out of this town. That is going to be an enormously heavy lift, and it's going to require discipline and focus.
But I'll also say if he does start moving and things start getting done, it'll create a lot of space for saying whatever he wants to say.
He just needs one
at
win.
every stop.
Just one win.
Okay, panel, thank you very much.